The night air was thick with the scent of damp earth and burning torches. In the distance, drums pounded, their rhythm deep and steady, carrying the sounds of the Nkolu Festival across the land. Laughter and music wove through the air, a symphony of celebration. But for Omolu, the festival was far from his mind. Each step he took felt heavier, as though the night itself sought to drag him into its depths. Omolu walked with purpose, though his mind was restless. The forest behind him was still whispering with echoes of his conversation with Mafenwa. Her heart was torn, and he knew it. She was no longer just a girl from Mbudu. The world was shifting around her, and with it, so was her place in it. "She will have to choose," he muttered under his breath, his hands tightening into fists. Would she follow the path that had been written for her, or would she fight against the fate that called her name? Omolu shook the thought away. The choice would not be easy. And yet there was something else, something deeper that unsettled him tonight. A feeling, a weight pressing against his chest, as if unseen eyes were following his every step. He glanced around. The trees swayed gently in the cool night air, their branches stretching like fingers toward the sky. The festival's golden glow shimmered in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness of the forest path he walked. The music played on, the people sang, the world rejoiced, but not Omolu. For him, this was a night of reckoning, and then a sound, a rustling in the bushes, too close, too sudden. His instincts flared, but before he could react, some figures burst from the darkness, swift and brutal as the strike of a hawk. Omolu barely had time to move before a fist collided with his jaw, sending a shockwave through his skull. He staggered back, his vision momentarily blurred, but he didn't fall. The second assailant wasted no time, driving a powerful elbow into his ribs. A sharp pain tore through his side, knocking the breath from his lungs. He fought back, his training kicking in. Twisting, he struck one of the men in the side of the head, the force of the blow sending the figure reeling. But the second attacker was relentless. A knee to his stomach, a punch to his ribs, a crushing blow to the back of his neck. Omolu hit the ground hard, the damp earth pressed against his cheek, the cold seeping into his skin. His head spun, his muscles screamed, but he wasn't done. He reached for his blade, too slow. A boot slammed against his wrist, pinning it to the ground. A heavy hand clamped around his throat, squeezing, cutting off his air. He gasped, his mind growing foggy. The night was slipping away. Then, a voice, low, unfamiliar. "He is the one. Take him." The weight on his throat lifted, but before he could draw breath, something struck the back of his head. A sudden blinding pain. Then darkness. From the dense underbrush, a pair of wide eyes watched in horror. The figure crouched low, his breath held tight in his chest. He had seen it all, the attack, the struggle, the brutal efficiency with which Omolu had been overpowered. And now he watched as they dragged him away, disappearing into the trees, swallowed by the night. The weight of the question settled heavily upon him. There was no time to think, no time to hesitate. He turned, his feet pounding against the forest floor as he ran. He had to find her. He had to find Mafenwa. The night wind rushed past him, carrying the urgency of fate itself. The village loomed ahead, alive with celebration, unaware of the shadow that had fallen upon it. In the heart of Mbudu, Mafenwa sat alone, troubled by an unease she could not explain. She traced her fingers along the worn edges of the relic in her palm, its surface strangely cold despite the warmth of the night. Then the voice, a breathless gasp, a desperate cry. "Mafenwa!" She turned sharply. The figure stumbled into the firelight, his chest rising and falling in frantic bursts. His eyes found hers, and in them she saw fear, and then his words, sharp as a blade. They took Omolu. A rush of cold washed over her. The relic burst into flame from her fingers, and for the first time in her life, Mafenwa felt true terror.